Number one, you are not alone. I know you may feel so isolated and you're like the only person feeling this, but you are not alone. And number two, always move forward. Just put one foot in front of the other, even if it's super difficult. Just keep going, keep pushing. Keep your mindset positive because the world needs you.
Hello and welcome to the Randall Osché Podcast, where honest conversations take the lead. Each week, we sit down with entrepreneurs, artists, thinkers, and change makers to unpack how they got from there to here and what they learned along the way. Real stories, no filters, lessons earned through experience, so you can take what's useful and leave the rest. Whether you're tuning in during your commute, a workout, or while making dinner, we're glad you're here. So take a seat, relax, grab a cup of tea, and join in the conversation. Now, let's get into this week's episode.
Today, I'd like to welcome my longtime friend, Kayla Wright, to the show. She's a teacher, daughter, mother, and breast cancer survivor. Kayla, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Regarding that short intro, would you like to say anything else about yourself?
Not really. That pretty much covers it. I'm currently living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Like you said, teacher, single mom of 2 little boys, and recent cancer survivors. That's not something I saw being added to my list of things about myself, but that's where we're at.
Excellent. And Kayla had reached out to me and she wanted us to cover her story, and I'm honored to be a part of that. So in today's episode, we're going to try to keep this on track and not jump around as we often do on my episodes. So this is what we're trying to cover. In honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, Kayla is allowing us the opportunity to share her survivorship story, and we are honored to do so. Usually these episodes are a bit all over the place, but I wanted to be more intentional, Kayla's story. So we are going to cover the following, loosely following, because I can't have that much self-control. Number one, the importance of self-screening and advocating for yourself and listening to your own body. The importance of having a positive and resilient mindset. The importance of community, family, friends during one of life's most challenging circumstances. The unfortunate state of the healthcare system in the United States, learning how to ask for help and accept it, and finally, how to effectively communicate and care for loved ones who are facing similar difficult circumstances. So we had a prep call for the episode, and I think I want to start there with some of the things we discussed. And number one of this agenda here, tell us a little bit about the importance of self-screening and then advocating for yourself during the process. And I imagine that's when you first discovered that there might be an issue.
Yeah. So kind of backtrack and talk about what actually happened to me. I had just had my second baby and just one night decided that I wanted to self-screen because I was feeding him. And I did find something. And like many working mothers in America these days, I had just gone back to work after maternity leave and I kind of procrastinated like getting it checked out. But I definitely knew something was there, and I had previously asked my doctor at my 6-week checkup after having him if I could have a mammogram because I did have 2 aunts. One passed away of breast cancer and the other is still battling it. If I could please have a mammogram, and she said, "Oh, you're too young for that. You're not, you don't really fit the age profile." And so after I had found it, obviously I made an appointment, but I did procrastinate a little bit about it. But where I'm trying to get with this story is that when I was diagnosed in June of 2023 and started to meet my oncologist and those sorts of things, it became very clear that this had been growing while I was pregnant. and I didn't even know it, which was very alarming. Obviously, cancer cannot enter the womb. I mean, it creates like a shield for your child, which is amazing, but the human body is amazing, period. But the fact that I found it when I did was really important because doctors explained to me had I waited one more month, it would have been into my brain, and then my chance of survival would have been very slim. So self-screening literally saved my life. And I just want to make sure that women know, you know your body best. And there were other signs too. I had lost a dramatic amount of weight. And I remember my mom saying like, oh, you look so great. You lost your baby weight. And I was just like, oh yeah, I have all these steps. I'm running up and down these steps, taking care of these two little guys. And, looking back, it was because I had cancer. I didn't know it. And my body was trying to fight it. And I should have listened to that. But like I said, like a lot of working moms, I was tired. I didn't really listen to my body the way I should have. But my point about self-screening is that I think it's best, and the American Cancer Society recommends that women self-screen at least once a month. Obviously, advocate for yourself. Like my doctor told me I was too young to get a mammogram, but I didn't realize that I could also have gotten something called genetic testing, where they take your blood and genetically test it against the 13 cancer genes to see if you are susceptible to getting it. And that can just at least give your doctor a little bit more data to help you and to figure out, what might come up in the future.
I might have missed this, but so you requested the mammogram. Were you able to get one eventually after she said no?
Not at that time. Not when I requested it. No, I was not given a mammogram, but it wasn't until I found something. The doctor also evaluated me, found something, we both agreed, let's get it checked out. And when I was diagnosed with cancer, that was the first mammogram I've ever had. And they told me like right then and there, that instant, they knew it was cancer.
What was the time frame between when you requested the mammogram? How many days, months, years passed between when you requested it and when you did your self-screening and found something?
I was probably around 34 when I requested the mammogram. I found it when I was 36. When I found it and was examined, they were very quick. I was very quick. Mm-hmm. They got me in quick to be diagnosed.
Thinking back on that moment when you were 34 and requested a mammogram, knowing what you know now and in hindsight, and it might not have been there when you were 34, but because of your journey through this, how might have you handled that situation and requesting the mammogram differently then?
I think I would have been more adamant. I mean, it's not that often that people butt heads with their doctor or kind of go against the grain. And I guess I should have pushed the envelope a little bit further, and I should have been a little bit more forward about it. That's not necessarily my character, and I don't think it's a lot of people's characters, but I should have been like, okay, if I can't get a mammogram, then what else can I do? Because even though I did test negative for all the genes, I do not have any of the cancer genes. So it's inconclusive as to why this happened to me. I do think that maybe, there could have been another option. And I know there are some agencies, like private agencies that aren't connected to hospitals, where you can just go pay out of pocket for a mammogram yourself. And those are just things I didn't think of. But looking back, I definitely would have pushed it a little bit further. And even if they said like, no, you can't have this, then okay, what else can we do? Yeah. Because, having two aunts with it, I wanted to protect myself.
It was obviously top of mind for you. For good reason. I think oftentimes in situations like that where we tend to not look at ourselves as a subject matter expert or the authority figure in the room that we're in, like whatever that room is. This is a doctor's office that we're talking about today, but it could be a boardroom as well. Is like, don't be afraid to like assert yourself. And one of the things that I'm thinking of now that I've told my nieces before plenty of times, like adults can be wrong. That's even their uncle. Like I'm all wrong more than I would care to admit. And like, if you sense that like, hey, I need a mammogram or I want it, I think everybody would be well within their rights to push that and figure out, and the healthcare system's complex and cumbersome. And years ago, not to like a serious extent like this, but I have an old like shoulder injury and it acted up and I was in pain. I couldn't sleep. So I was up like pacing my apartment years ago and I went to urgent care or something like that. And she examined it. She didn't really tell me about the treatment plan or what we were trying to figure out. And she's like, well, I'm going to give you an x-ray. So I got an x-ray. And then she's like, well, yep, your shoulder's not broken. It's like, yeah, I know. I could have told you my shoulder wasn't broken. This happened when I was 17 and sometimes it bothers me ever since. She's like, well, if we want to find out more information, you need to get an MRI. I was like, well, why didn't you tell me that before I got the x-ray? Like, I knew it wasn't broken. I wasn't in a car crash. I didn't fall. I didn't do anything. It's an old injury. I don't know, like, again, not to a serious extent, but if the doctor would have been more clear with me with what steps that she was taking, and if I knew better the questions to ask,
Right.
I could have avoided, again, this is two different things we're talking about.
Because at the end of the day, you were listening to your body.
Right.
And, that's something I think, like, now I'm definitely more in tune. Like, my doctor taught me now, obviously, like, if something happens consistently for 3 to 5 days and it's not normal, then you need to tell someone.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a little bit more exaggerated because of my case. Like, obviously, cancer is something that's always going to be in the back of my head. I mean, if I have a headache for a few days, I am in a complete panic because of what I went through, and I don't, obviously want to go through that again. But I mean, it's true. Like, you should just listen. You know yourself more than anyone else. No one else knows you and how you feel. So I do think that's a thing that a lot of people should do, is just advocate for themselves, not just about their health, but for anything.
I would agree. I suppose the point would be listen to your body and don't be afraid to assert yourself and advocate for what you need in that moment.
Right.
And you don't have to be a bully about it. You don't have to be a jerk about it, but you can put yourself first and figure out what questions you need to ask to get you to where you need to be.
Yeah.
What about, like, so you were then diagnosed and then it was going to be several months of treatment. So how important was having a positive and resilient mindset through the coming months after your diagnosis?
I think it was so crucial. Everyone I talk to, friends, family, I have close members of my family who survived cancer, and they told me that keeping your mind positive is half of the battle. And I really think that in those moments throughout this horrendous physical experience that I had, it was very hard to keep my mind positive. But I never talked about this in a way as if I was not going to survive. And I never thought about it in a way as if I wasn't going to either. Like, I would say, when I survive this, or when I get on the other side of this, or I would think about things with my boy's life, when I see them graduate, when I go to their wedding. I just always, and I never pictured myself allowing cancer to take. I just kept trudging forward. And yeah, that was really hard, but I thought about other people too that had survived it. I know it sounds really cheesy, but like Marielle Lemieux, James Conner, they were like top athletes who literally went to treatment and then played at the highest level of their game. And that was really inspiring to me. I researched interviews they had done, said that if they wouldn't have kept their mind strong, then their body probably wouldn't have followed. And so I just tried to do the same. And like I said, it was really difficult at times, but I think that's something that 100% carried me through.
2 follow-up questions to that is, and you might not have a specific answer, and that's fine, but how do you think that having a positive mindset helped your body fight and heal?
I just think by not allowing myself to go into that dark place where I didn't think I was going to live, or, just letting myself kind of go. I always was fighting against it. I think that my body just kind of followed suit in a way. And I also tried my best to just keep trudging along. I mean, I had 2 little boys at home. I never really wanted them to see their mommy in bed sick. I wanted to keep moving forward as if cancer was part of my life. It wasn't my life. Now, there were so many bumps in the road for me. I mean, I had trouble with chemo. It put me into the hospital one time. And I think that was probably one of my darkest moments because I was in the hospital by myself. It was pretty serious. I didn't really realize at the time how serious it was. And I think maybe because I don't want to say I didn't take it too seriously. Obviously, I took it seriously. But I didn't allow my head to go there to the darkness, to the negative side. I just kept thinking, this is just a phase. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to be home with my kids soon, or I'm going to be back to work soon. Or I kept thinking in a few years from now, this is going to be nothing. I'm going to look back on this time and think, wow, I got through that. I do think once you allow your mind to go into the negativity, then maybe your body follows. I mean, I don't have any like pure research about that, but in my case, I do think that helped my body too. Like I said, I never thought about it as if like this was going to take my life. Like I always thought like this is not going to be the reason I die.
This is, I'm in awe of your story and just what you've shared with me so far. Like,
Thanks.
Just taken aback. When you had those intrusive thoughts, how long did you let them linger? And then how would you dismiss them for yourself?
You mean like the intrusive negative thoughts?
Yes.
I mean, when I was in the hospital, when it was pretty serious there, it was 4 days of like solitude. So all I had was time and four walls and quiet to just think and think and think. And I just started forward thinking, in 5 years, I want to do this. In 10 years, I want to do that. I thought about things in terms of my kids. In 5 years, they're going to be in grade school. And like, I have to be there to like make cookies or whatever. And I have to be there for middle school dances and those sorts of things. Now, I understand that some people don't have kids to motivate them to live, but I do think that I wouldn't even think about my kids. I also thought about like my family and the people in my life that valued me. And I just thought like, I'm not going to let this take me. I'm just not going to. I just kept trudging forward. It was so hard. I don't have an exact answer on how I like got the negative thoughts out. It happened. It 100% happened. And especially when your body is so physically pushed, you want to give up. And I saw it on people's faces. And in this experience, that was probably one of the most scary things is when I went to my treatment center and like saw the look of defeat on people's faces. The people that were also getting treatment. It was so alarming. And I remember thinking to myself, I could see that they had turned the switch, that they just were so physically spent. And listen, after I just went through what I just went through, I can see how it can physically and mentally just drag somebody down. It is like the worst possible thing ever. And I thought to myself, seeing those people, they had to have gone through that so much to just allow themselves to be like, you know what, that's it. I can't take anymore. And if that's the point where they're at and they just don't want to fight anymore, I get it. I totally get it. But I just thought to myself, like, I have too much to live for to allow this to take me.
Yeah, you're probably the toughest person I know. Like, that's, I think that you went through what is probably one of most people's top fears in life. And just to hear your story about how you kept positive and resilient and fought through it, and it wasn't easy, but you did it. I think everybody needs to find like their North Star. And I think Kayla can correct me if I'm wrong here, that her North Star was to see her kids grow up and to be part of their milestones in their life and her family around her. But I think everybody, if they're fighting through, an illness or they're trying to accomplish something or trying to get unstuck, you got to know what you're doing it for, right? At a meeting the other day and somebody used this analogy. It's like, I want to go on a road trip, but then you get in the car and then you don't punch in the coordinates into your GPS. You just drive in circles. Like you get nowhere. And I think a lot of people, not given life or death circumstances, they do that on a daily basis. They just get up and they go through the motions and then they get unhappy with where they're at. But I think it's just so important to understand what it is that you want to accomplish, what's on the other side of the hard thing that you're fighting through. And if that gives you some motivation, direction, additional resilience, I think that that's even better.
For sure. And I was the person that was like in my classroom, like telling kids, keep your eyes on the prize. What's your goal? Look for it. And then it was like I was eating my words. Like I had no choice. I had to do that.
Yeah.
But, I completely agree with you that can be applied to anything in life. Like, what is your goal? Where do you see yourself? You're not just going to get it. You have to put in the work to get it.
Yeah. Excellent segue to this follow-up. When you were going through your treatment and you were saying to yourself, like, in 5 years, I want to do this, in 10 years, I want to do that. What does that map look like for you of the things that you wanted to accomplish? And, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, was that all about your boys and where they would be at and like their milestones? Or is this like dreams, adventures that you want to have, places that you wanted to visit? And then where does that live now? Is that still a mental picture, or is those things like some
things have come to fruition. Well, definitely, like with my boys, just being there for every milestone of their life is the top priority for me. But some other things, I mean, I don't know what this is yet, but like I knew I wanted to write a book about what I experienced. I read a wonderful book called Not My Breast Year by Kayla Wright during my cancer journey, which was outstanding. She literally walked me through every point of every step of the way throughout the journey. So I wanted to write a book, and I'm in the process of doing that right now. I knew that I wanted to go to Italy. That's someplace I've always dreamed of going, and I'm going in summer of 2026. My really good work colleague and I are going. I knew that I wanted to take the boys on as many possible adventures as I could, and I'm doing that. I mean, I took them to Florida for the first time, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old on a plane for the first time this past spring, and it was fantastic. And I knew that I wanted to throughout my career as a teacher, I was sporadically a vice principal. And I knew that in the next 5 years, that was where I wanted my career to go. I felt like that was my true calling. And I love teaching, but I just feel like that's where I want the last chapter of my career to be. And so I started thinking to myself, like, okay, Kayla, what are you doing in your career to get you there? I just became more intentional about my life. Because if there's one thing that this experience taught me is that you can buy a lot of things, but you cannot buy time. And I thought to myself, if I am given this next chapter, I'm going to make it the best possible one that I can and just protect my peace, be a good person, and strive for those things that I wanted. I mean, I was always the person that was like, oh, I'm not going to take a day off work to do that, or I could never afford to go here, or I could never do that. And not that everything's about money, because I know that a lot of people are in a place where they can't financially do the things that they want to do. I just knew that I had to be more intentional because time is the most precious entity that we have. It's so valuable. And I wanted to make sure that I was living my life in the most intentional way if I was given this second chapter, and I'm doing it.
Yeah, I think that you're already off to a hot start. I'm glad to see that.
Thanks.
Where at in Italy are you going 2026?
It is several different places.
Okay.
I don't know them off the top of my head.
That's fine. Excellent. You'll love it. I've been to Italy. One of the places I visited was Naples. Craziest place I've been to. Just if that's on your list, just
I'm pretty sure it is.
Remember this, and then when you get there, you'll be like, yeah, he was right. It's not Elk County. Regarding the book, do you have a process for that? How is that? Tell me about that.
So I'm in the process of it right now. I'm not saying I have a deadline, it's going to be done by such and such time. But when something pops into my head randomly, I try to just get to my computer and write it down. I don't want to give too many things away because it's not going to be necessarily just first this happened and then that happened, telling my story. But also there were quite a few serendipitous things that happened to me or during this that I just felt were such great stories that I had to tell them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an English teacher, so storytelling is a huge part of my life, and I understand the power of words. And I just both want to write a story to showcase the things that happened and also to recognize kind of the behind the scenes that I feel a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, excellent. We'll use this as a teaser. Stay tuned, folks. Tell me about the importance of community, family, friends during your cancer journey.
So I will be the first to admit that I will never ask for help. I will just suck it up and trudge through or find other ways or solutions. I will never be the person that's hey, I need your help with this. It's just, I guess, a thing about my ego or pride. I would just like to try to figure it out on my own. And there were different groups or communities in my life that really just uplifted me. And I remember some of my college girlfriends saying well, we know you won't accept help. If this is a time in your life when you need help, you need to just take it. And I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Like, yeah. And I didn't just think about the help for me, but also for my kids. Like I said, I never wanted to think about those terrible, intrusive thoughts, but I also thought about like, listen, I had just had a second baby. I didn't have money for a funeral if I had to happen to pass away. I was on a leave from work. So the fact that my local community where I grew up, my school community, my college girlfriends, my friends, the fact that all of those people came together to kind of pull me out of the darkness, both like emotionally and financially, was and is something that like I will never be able to forget. At the same time, it showed me that people did value me and what I brought to the table. So it made me realize that maybe I was a good person after all, and that people like saw that, and the fact that they wanted to help me so unconditionally and so rapidly, it was instantaneous. I remember my cousin being like, hey, we're going to do this benefit for you, and I don't care if you want it or not, like we're doing it. My college girlfriends, the same thing. My friends, my school community, they were like, we're doing this and you're not taking no for an answer. Because they knew if they came to me and said, hey, we would like to do this for you, I would say like, no, I'm not doing that. We're not doing that. And at first I didn't want to make like a quote unquote a spectacle of this. And I wanted to be quiet about it. But also at the same time, I remember my cousin telling me, like, when someone thinks of breast cancer, they don't think someone who just had a baby or someone my age. You know what I mean? I'm not in that demographic. And so when she told me that, I realized, like, oh, I do need to be out there, because if there's one thing I can do, it's like I want to spread awareness. If I can influence one woman to schedule a mammogram or self-screen herself, then, you know, I've done that. And by getting help from my community, in a way, I felt power that I could help others to take care of themselves and do what was necessary. If I could help one person save themselves, then I was all for it. But yeah, the way that people racked around me is just, I don't think I can really truly put it into words. And it wasn't even like the big things, you know, like the benefits. It was the small things too. Students messaging me, or like Valentine's Day, they all made me Valentine's and a teacher delivered it to my house. Those little things like truly pulled me out of the worst times. Or just, you know, a friend being like, hey, I'm bringing over a coffee and we're going to talk. And when people would talk to me about things that didn't involve cancer, that was top tier for me. Because then it made me realize there is life going on outside of this. And once I get through this, I can be involved in that again. I can talk about random stuff. I can talk about some show that my friend watched, or, you know, what her daughter's doing right now. Those sorts of things. When someone's going through this and it's just like they're bogged down by it, getting a glimpse into regular normalcy is huge. I can't even explain it.
Did you appreciate how people self-imposed the help for you? You're like, oh, we're going to do this. I'm going to do this for you. And
yeah, I know a lot of people aren't. I know a lot of people aren't like that, but if people wouldn't have done that, I would have never accepted it. I would have been like, no, we're not doing that. You know, the fact that people were just like, we're doing it meant everything, because I'm also a planner. So I would have been like, okay, if we're doing that, let me do this. I would have been like, well, what can I do? Or what can I make? Yeah. Those sorts of things. So the fact that they just took the wheel, because that's me. If I wasn't getting the help, I would have been the person steering that. I would have been like, we're going to do this for them. We're going to do that, because I'm very much a planner in that way.
This is something I've explored on other episodes. Kayla and I grew up in the same community, and obviously the community you grow up in shapes you probably at least for the first like 18 years of your life when you're most impressionable. You had mentioned that you would never ask for help. I think I'm the same way. Do you think that's influenced from the area that we grew up in, or am I just making things up in my head?
I don't know. Maybe.
For context, maybe for any listeners who are outside of our personal networks, which they're at present moment probably not many, to be honest. But
I do think, on the flip side of that, I think the sense of community that our hometown has is unlike any other. I mean, if one thing happens to somebody from that area, you know, word gets around very quickly. And then people, like, it was just like a trickle down effect. It was just like one thing after the next, you know, and I think everybody gets on board. Yeah. I mean, that is one powerful thing. And I do recognize that not everybody has that. I mean, you and I talked about community internationally. I do think that is one powerful thing that came out of this, is I realized how I valued my community and where I grew up. And listen, I moved out of that community when I was 18 and I never moved back. And the fact that they still wrapped around me the way that they did was just unprecedented.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily know if it's a thing that like we grew up, or maybe just like how our parents raised us. It's like I have a source of stubbornness, because if I can't figure something out, like I'll find a different solution.
Yeah. A couple of things that make me think that, and I promise I'll get back on track here, is Western Pennsylvania, even like Pittsburgh, is isolated from the rest of the country. If you think of Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York City, up the coast of Connecticut, you can all get to those different cities within an hour or a little bit more of each. But Pittsburgh's kind of in the middle of Appalachia, or where we grew up even. Mm-hmm. And you can't, using Pittsburgh as an example, like the nearest city is 3 hours away. I think that's Cleveland. Yeah. Cleveland's a lot like Pittsburgh. And then we grew up in a rural community that I just think is a bit isolated. And I think that helps build community and the people that wanted to help you. But I think there's also a self-reliance probably that's built in because of that, not to mention that it's a blue collar town of,
right.
I don't need to ask for help because I'm too tough for that.
I hear what you're saying. We don't have the resources for it.
Right.
Like you don't have the resources, so you create your own. Right. You figure out a different path.
Yeah.
Because that we didn't have a choice. Where we grew up, like you said, the nearest mall was 3 hours away. So you just have to be innovative and figure out like, okay, if I can't get this, then what else can I get?
Before the days of Amazon.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
The thing too that I've recognized from doing this podcast, which has helped me think about community and asking for help and relying on others. And I wouldn't have felt this way before I released. We're recording this in August of 2025. I've released 24 or so episodes so far, and I'm learning more about myself and different principles that I want to apply to my life as I go through this podcasting journey. And within the first probably 6 or so episodes I recorded, I was like, oh, damn, people need people. Like now that's one of my life's guiding principles, that we can't do this thing alone. Whatever your circumstances are, you have to rely on people. And I think it's easy in 2025 to look at social media or to look at a movie star and think like, oh, they had all the success, they worked so hard themselves. But what you don't see is what happened in the background, right? Is their parents took out a second mortgage on their house to pay for acting lessons, perhaps. Things like that happen. People don't get to where they're at. They don't accomplish big things, you know, whether that's career, having a life-threatening illness that you're trying to overcome without relying on people. So that's one of my takeaways that's shaping how I see the world a bit differently.
I agree. And I like what you said about like those people that are successful, because you don't look at a top athlete or a top actor and think that they asked for help at any point. Like that's not something that comes to your mind. You just think like, oh, they had the natural talent to get them there. But I guarantee you at some point along the lines of whatever they're doing, they asked for help. And one thing I've learned is a lot more people ask for help than I realize.
Yes.
And that's like normal. You know
Yes.
what I mean? Like in those periods of my career when I was a vice principal and I didn't know the answer to something, I was almost bashful or scared to ask for help. But I was like, you know what, that's like a good thing. Like, and that's something I want to teach my sons and my students. You have to ask for help at times, because not everybody can do it all on their own, whether it's a work task or, like you said, battling an illness. Like we have to rely on each other. There's no way that you can get through certain things on your own. I think that's why we have resources. That's why, like, I'm always telling my students, use your resources. If you don't know something, like, what can you do to figure it out?
Yeah. Even if somebody could accomplish something on their own, right? If you relied on other people, you would go further faster. Other people have gone down this road before you, even like you read the book, Not My Best Year. Like, she had already done this. You were able to take her insights, guidance, and wisdom and apply them to your journey instead of you learning the hard way yourself, going through it, right? You could have ended up with the same result, but because of the book and learning from her journey, you were able to apply it to yours, and that helped you, right? That's, you know, people need people.
To piggyback off of that, something else that like really helped me was talking to people. Well, I had one friend, Tina, who was going through the same exact thing as me. We had the same type of cancer. She unfortunately did not win her battle. But the fact that we had each other in those moments to call and say like, hey, this is what happened to me. What did you do to help with this? Or I'm having that. And then I also had my uncle who I talked to, because cancer can be so isolating. It can be way more isolating than anyone realizes. Like, I talked about community and how everybody wrapped around me, but at the same time, I was going through something that I felt like no one understood. Nobody knew what it was like to walk into, with my bald head, to walk into a store and like see people look at me that way. But when I talked to Tina or I talked to my Uncle Bob, they were like, no, I understand how that feels. And that was hard. Or, I had bone pain and this is like what helped me with that. Or like I had this side effect of chemo. And I think that was crucial. Even when I went to my cancer center, at my treatment center, it was nice to have that sort of camaraderie of like, yeah, we've all been through this terrible thing. And that is something that I don't think a lot of people seek out in their lives. But I'm so grateful that I had those people, because it felt like at that time, they were the only other people that understood what I was going through.
Yeah.
And that I think is priceless. Like,
I would agree.
Let's take a quick break from today's episode. If you're enjoying the conversation, take a second to like, follow, or subscribe wherever you're tuning in. We'd really appreciate it. You can also find us on Instagram at Randall Osché. That's RANDALLOSCHE. And check out more at podcast.randallosché.com, including show notes and other resources from today's episode. All right, back to the conversation.
We're going to segue to the unfortunate state of the healthcare system in the United States. Okay. You said something before about every treatment was like $45,000, X number of treatments. What was that again?
I received chemo for 6 months from July to December, and I calculated through my medical bills that it was approximately $45,000 every chemo session, and I had it once per week. And then in between that, I also had to get this. If your white blood cell count or your levels of your hemoglobin and all those things aren't where they want them to be, they can't give you chemo because it will just deteriorate you even more. So that happened to me several times. And then I had to get these injections, which were about approximately $1,000 a piece. I had to get those several times. So my summary of this is that having cancer or any life-threatening illness is extremely expensive. And the fact that, I literally saw patients get turned away because their insurance wouldn't cover their chemo, or they couldn't get their MRI approved fast enough. I just can't believe that those things were happening in our country. I mean, I know for a fact that, cancer works so quickly. And if those patients don't get the chemo, that is literally going to define whether they have a chance at living or they don't. And I know that with MRIs, if you don't know where it is, how are you supposed to attack it? So those people I saw in those moments, it was just heart-wrenching. And I just thought to myself, how is this happening in our country? There has to be other ways to go about it. And I know that other countries do have better ways of going about it. And I know in terms of your job, I mean, we talk about maternity leave and how it's different in a lot of countries. Well, it's the same thing when you have an illness in other countries. I'm not saying I had a bad experience with my job. I was able to take FMLA, etc. But I just feel like other countries are more empathetic to the fact that we don't know. I didn't choose to have cancer. I didn't choose to have to take a leave off of work. I just think that there are other systems in place internationally that help support those patients a little bit better than we have.
I would agree. America is the wealthiest nation that's ever existed and is presently the only developed nations, comparing it to the UK, Canada, Germany, France, Australia, where a serious illness like breast cancer can put you at risk of losing everything financially and going bankrupt. It can happen in the UK, Canada, Germany, France. However, it rarely, if ever, happens. But the way the healthcare system works in the United States, if you don't work for an employer and that employer doesn't have good benefits, you're not going to get treatment and nobody wants what comes next after that, or you can get treatment. I mean, if you're a super wealthy individual, other than that, you're kind of screwed in the United States of America. I did the math quickly on the chemo treatments. So for 6 months, that's half a year. That's 26 weeks. Each week, you said it was $45,000. That's 1.1, we'll say $1.2 million. Does that sound about right?
I'm just laughing because that is just, how is that happening? I don't get it. And it's something I could go down and I could open a huge can of worms about, but I just feel like it's just wild to me. Literally medicine that saved my life. And like you just said, people going bankrupt. If people did not have benefits for me, 100%, I would have gone bankrupt. Because when you have cancer, everything doesn't stop. You still have to pay your mortgage. You still have to pay daycare. You still have to pay, everything. Yeah. I mean, it's not like you have a backup plan. Who has a backup plan for that? Nobody.
Yeah, not in the United States. I mean, I think that's the other thing that I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, but everything's just so expensive. Not only just healthcare, but like there's a huge discrepancy between the amount of money that we make and what it can afford us. And yes, life is difficult financially in any country, but I would argue that that discrepancy between what you earn and what it can afford you, that delta is significantly higher in the United States.
And I just thought of what you said about in our nation, when you're employed, you have insurance. I'm very fortunate. I have a great job and they have great insurance. But what about people who are retired and they get cancer? They don't have, the health insurance that they should to be able to help them. And that's the demographic that gets cancer the most.
Yeah. As an example, not cancer treatment specific, but just for healthcare benefits. In the United States, you have the opportunity when you leave an employer to opt into COBRA insurance. I've left a couple jobs. I've had the opportunity to accept COBRA insurance from these employers, which were large financial institutions. And while I was employed, I might have been paying a couple $100s a month for my healthcare benefits at most. But my opportunity to opt in for healthcare post leaving those employers was over $1,000 a month for me, a single guy who's, knock on wood, healthy and has had no serious illnesses or anything. Compare and contrast that $1,000 out-of-pocket expense for healthcare. I've looked into getting a healthcare plan for Portugal for myself, and a healthcare plan to cover me in Portugal, out-of-pocket, private insurance, $80 per month. $80 per month, $1,000 per month in the United States. Significant.
It's literally something that you can't wrap your head around.
I
just
like,
can't.
I've talked to like European friends about this, and they can't. They're shocked and baffled, and I have to walk them through the math and how it works in the United States, and like it's crazy. Now you mentioned some of the help that you had received and some of the traits in those people that had forced that help upon you, deservingly so. As a patient, as you were going through this, what did you learn about how people in your circle, how you preferred them to like effectively communicate your care with them, with loved ones and the people who were offering assistance as you were going through such a difficult time? How would you prefer to communicate with them what was going on, and how would you prefer for them to communicate with you about the circumstances that you were going through?
Okay, so at first it was really overwhelming to have I felt inundated with, it's a positive thing, but I was inundated with like calls, emails, texts, people like, how are you doing? What's going on? Like, give me an update. So it was actually my cousin. She said it would be a great idea if you created an Instagram page or something where you could spread awareness, or you could talk to people about your story. And I thought, you know what, that's a good idea. But then I thought, that would be such a great idea for me to write one thing and just say like, update, yada, yada, yada. This is what's going on. That way I wasn't feeling so overwhelmed, because listen, when someone reaches out to you, like, that is a source of care. They care about you. And I didn't want to miss one text message, one call, and make people think like, oh, well, she doesn't care. I mean, no, I understand people are like, well, she's going through cancer. She's got a lot on her plate. She's not going to necessarily answer my text. But like, to me, I wanted people to know what was going on and to not worry. And that was a really helpful way for me to get a message out there really quickly. And it also helped me to track my journey. Every time I went to chemo, I took a picture and I said like chemo number, blah, blah, blah. This is what's going on. And that for me was like, okay, like one more down. I have this many more to go. And now it's something that like, hopefully 10 years from now, my kids can look back on and see the whole journey, you know, via timestamps, all of those things. And it was another way for people to just check in and say like, keep going, we got your back, like those sorts of things. And that was something that I'm glad I did. I'm really glad I did. And another thing, to give advice to people who know someone who's recently diagnosed, the thing that I really appreciated is just when people were like, you know what, Kayla, like this sucks. I'm so sorry this is happening to you. And the last thing I wanted was for someone to feel bad for me. And I felt like my close friends, like my girlfriends, they never felt bad for me. They never like were like, oh, poor you. They just were like, you know what? This really sucks. We don't know why this is happening to you. Here are the things I can do for you. This is what I can do for you. Or even just telling me an old story like, hey, remember that time when you blah, 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 like something to just make me laugh. I really appreciated friends who would be like, you know, we have a lot more adventures to go on together, or we're gonna go to this next month or something like that. Like something for me to look forward to, so I wasn't so bogged down by the seriousness of what I was going through. So I think like my best advice, if you know somebody who's been diagnosed recently or you're not sure how to communicate with them, just meeting them halfway and keeping it as normal as possible and just validating how they feel, or sometimes just listening. Those things were the most important to me. I can't even tell you how many times my best friend probably just heard me cry on the phone. And I'm grateful for her for that, but she just gave me the space to talk to someone. You know, that's really all you really need. Is for someone to be like, you know what, that sucks, and validate that what you're going through isn't fair. Your feelings are natural. Because sometimes I'd be like, am I being too much about this? Or do like I need to calm down? And, you know, it took my friends and my family to be like, no, like they would center me and make me feel like, you know, this does suck. Like it is hard. It's okay to feel that way. And yeah, I think keeping a sense of normalcy. I can't tell you how many times people delivered a meal to my house. It was just so nice to hear about other things. Like, tell me about your kid's t-ball game, please. Tell me about something funny that happened at work. Please tell me a story, because it helped me escape the hell that I was going through normally.
Yeah. You mentioned meals. I wanted to get to this. There was a meal train campaign. You want to tell us a little bit about that, what it is and the success of it?
Yeah, my college girlfriends, I didn't even know this thing existed. It's called mealtrain.com. I love cooking. Food is a huge part of my life. And they said, listen, we can create this thing for you. And like people will have a calendar on there and people can literally sign up and deliver food to your home for your family. And at first I was like, no, like I will still be able to cook. I want to cook with my boys. And I learned really quick after the first chemo that there was going to be no cooking on chemo days. So that's what happened. Basically, everybody went out to everybody and people could sign up. And that's when people started signing up, was the day I had chemo or the day after I had chemo. I had chemo regularly on every Wednesday. So it was the whole month of like, let's say August. Every Wednesday was full. And then it became something that I looked forward to. Like I knew that my colleague was going to be here and they were making this. And if people didn't want to sign up to cook, like say they didn't like cooking or they didn't think they were good at it, they could donate us a gift card. And that is something that I think is just like so beneficial. And for me, like it literally helped to feed my family because, you know, I was so physically drained on those days, but also it uplifted my spirits when someone came to my house and just talked to me.
What was your boys' favorite meal train meal?
They are so picky. I think they left out. They were just like chicken nuggets the whole time, but yeah.
Fair enough. So my follow-up to that, but I think I might already know the answer, was who did they determine was the best and worst cooks?
I'm not going to answer. I don't.
Fair.
We didn't have one bad meal. I will say that. And my parents lived with us too.
Yeah.
Like I wanted my parents here with me, and they moved in with us for the whole time. And so it wasn't just us; it was them too. So we were feeding a lot of mouths. And then if my parents weren't here, my cousin was staying with me, my aunt, my godmother. So there was always a lot of people in our home. So
what was your parents' favorite meal train meal? Who was their favorite cook?
I don't remember who made this.
Of course you don't.
But somebody made like a Tuscan chicken something. It was just like really good chicken.
Yeah.
And yeah, it got gobbled up. Oh, and another thing, speaking of food, that I started that someone told me is to start making videos of me and my kids. So we started this thing called Cooking Show. At first it was just Jason Mommy Cooking Show, and then it turned into Jason KJ Mommy Cooking Show, where I would just set the camera up and we would cook together. And I didn't know where this was going to go, but now it's become like a staple. At first I was like, I need to just like make videos with them because I didn't know what was going to happen to me. And I wanted to document things. And I was like, okay, well, we need an activity. And so we just started cooking together, and it just became like a thing. And now it's something like even now that they request. But food was definitely like, I don't know how we got on food, but it was like an integral part of my cancer journey. Not to mention, like, cancer makes you really hungry all the time. So you just eat a lot. I know that's not for all patients, but for me, it was.
So you enjoyed the Tuscan chicken as well?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I'm curious to know what your boy's perspective was, if you know it, from your treatment. Maybe during the time it was happening, or now that it's removed. How do you guys talk about what happened?
Yeah, that's really important. Yeah, I think especially for parents who are dealing with it. My first doctor that I encountered was a surgeon. That was the first doctor that I saw. And she actually gave me books for kids. And they really helped my kids. But I knew, being a teacher, I never wanted to use the word cancer. I just told them Mommy is sick. And, you know, I had several surgeries and I got my port put in. That was like the very first thing that happened. And so they saw the physical bandage on me. And, you know, they would just be like, Mommy's boo-boo. And I taught them about like gentle. You have to be gentle around Mommy's boo-boos, because like later on I had 2 surgeries and I wasn't even able to pick up my 6-month-old. But like teaching them those things. And then it was my friend. She's a hairstylist, a local hairstylist, and we were in a wedding together. She had the idea of having the boys help me shave my head when it got to that point. And that's what I was most fearful of. I was fearful of, like, that's such a drastic change. They've always seen their mom with hair, and they were so small. I didn't want it to freak them out. And so I'm so thankful for her. She had the idea, and she was just like, I'm just going to come over and we're going to do it in the backyard. And they thought it was the coolest thing. I mean, she let them use the buzzers. I have pictures of them touching my bald head. And then it became a cool thing. They would kiss my head, and they were eventually like, can I be bald like you, Mommy? And that really, like, as a woman, when you lose your hair, it's like losing a sense of your femininity. And the fact that they weren't scared of me and they were cool about it, and they just kind of were resilient themselves as children, that was huge to me. But sweet. I do think keeping it light and getting books for those parents who are dealing with a cancer battle, that was huge. And yeah, they knew Mommy was sick, but, you know, I would also be positive and say, like, well, doctors are making Mommy better. Or I would say, like, Mommy had to get her medicine today, and they knew that maybe I would be a little bit different than usual, but I never sat down for like one day. I always wanted to be out and about doing something with them.
Good for you. As we get closer to wrapping up the conversation, I have a few, I'll call them rapid fire questions that I like to ask all my guests, but I'm going to try my best to adapt them to the specific conversation we're having today. If any of the listeners are going through a similar circumstance now, where they're going through treatment or fighting an illness, what would be the top 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you would give them?
Number 1, you are not alone. I know you might feel so isolated and you're like the only person feeling this, but you are not alone. And number 2, always move forward. Just put one foot in front of the other, even if it's super difficult. Just keep going, keep pushing. Keep your mindset positive, because the world needs you.
You're doing great.
Thanks.
There's some saying about, like, I don't know, I can't think of it. Like 1,000-mile journey starts with like the first step.
Well, it's a common saying that cancer is a marathon. And like the first line of Karasapa's book is like, yeah, it's a marathon I didn't sign up for and I had to run in flip-flops. And that's a very good analogy for cancer.
I like that. Which leads us to our next question, maybe. What's the most influential book that you read along the way, either like kids book or book that you read for your own information?
Oh, Not My Breast Year by Kara Sapida. And then I can't remember the title of the children's book, but it's a story about like the mom has a garden and like the mom and the children garden together, and sometimes the garden needs water to help it grow, which would kind of be like similar to chemo and those sorts of things. And it's like sometimes mommy needs to lay down and then you can snuggle her. I'm really sorry, I don't remember the title.
In Mommy's Garden?
Yes, there you go.
Given your new outlook on life, your new perspective that you have now, what advice would you give your younger self?
That's a big question. Make every moment count. I think that other cancer survivors will agree that one positive thing cancer gives you, if you have a whole new perspective in life, you have a whole new lens that you view your life through. And I truly feel like cancer forged me into the person that I'm supposed to be. And if I had to give my younger self any advice, it'd be like, who you spend your time with and what you spend your time doing matters. So make it count. Make sure you're maneuvering yourself in a way that you're going to be proud of yourself, and other people are going to be proud to be your friend.
Proud to be your friend.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So you said cancer forged you into the person you're supposed to be. Who's that person?
Someone who's resilient, empathetic, determined. I feel like I also have a sense of urgency. Like, I'm so happy to be alive. So it's like, I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do this. Positive. And I just want to be an overall good person, if that makes sense. I would say also, like, I'm a little bit more adventurous than I was pre-cancer.
Okay. And if the listeners wanted to reach out to you, connect in some form or fashion for whatever reason, where can they find you at?
My Instagram is Ks_fight4life. You can find me on there, and please feel free to reach out. I really like helping people or just talking to people about this or what I can do to help others. So, I'm all about that.
And as we wrap up today's conversation, do you have any final thoughts? Anything from your story that we didn't include that you want to include, or any final thoughts that you want our listeners to take away?
Just always keep moving forward, and just know that, like, cancer doesn't have to be your full story. You can just be part of your story. And along the way, there is going to be good and bad. And those, like I said, are going to forge you into a new version of yourself that you never thought even could exist. And my advice to people is that time matters, and make sure you are spending your time in a way that makes you happy and you are at peace with yourself and your life, and you maneuver yourself and your life forward in a way that you want, because you only have one chance at that. So make it count.
Beautiful.
Thank
Kayla
you.
Wright, thank you for sharing your story with us. I'm in awe. You probably are the toughest person I know, one of the most resilient people I'd have to know as well, and just how you have approached, your treatment, and it's all inspiring. I'm impressed. I'm taken aback, and I hope that the story that we shared here today does help somebody self-screen, advocate for themselves, put themselves in a better situation to have better care and better care sooner.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I just appreciate this opportunity to share my story.
Absolutely.
And that wraps up today's conversation on the Randall Osché Podcast. Thanks again to our guest for sharing their time, knowledge, and lessons with us. If the episode brought you any value, the best way to support the show is to follow or subscribe on your favorite platform. That helps us reach more people like you. You can also visit podcast.randallosché.com for blog posts, full transcripts, and other episode resources. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and keep moving forward.